Good morning and welcome to Sunday SoulDay. Hi, Alli.
Hi, good morning, Damesha.
I am super excited about today because Alli and I are going to do something a little different. We have been interviewing just fantastic guests and have just learned so much from all of our guests that have come on. But we also wanted to use Sunday SoulDay to talk about different topics that affect our lives, affect the lives of our clients, and even, some of our friends and families that we think are just important to talk about as we are working on fueling our mind, body, and soul. So before I, even get started, I just wanted to thank everyone who has tuned in and watched some of our episodes. Like, I'm just amazed at some of the views. I know Alli is keeping track for me and just Alli, I'll let you kind of talk here, but just super excited about just all of the positive feedback that we're getting.
It's been mind-blowing. Yeah, I've been looking to see kind of how we've been doing with our audience and the feedback I get from friends and family. The number of views continue to increase. Even videos that we posted maybe 2 months ago, I just can't believe how far things have come in just a really short period of time. And I just appreciate all of the support and the feedback that we've gotten from everyone and just how much I've learned and grown. I know you have as well.
So
I looked at, I can't even believe it. One of the episode where I interviewed you, it's almost at like 3,000 views already. Yeah.
my
How was that for you? How did, your family and friends and everyone receive the episode where I interviewed you?
Yeah, it was mixed reviews as expected. I did receive some positive feedback from friends and maybe like two of my family members, but definitely did receive some not so positive feedback where I was basically warned that I could be sued and to you know not talk about certain things and also I was I think other people's feelings were more important than mine, because I was told that you didn't consider anyone's feelings in this, and you were only talking about what happened to you and not thinking about how it could affect, like, basically me speaking up about the abuse that I experienced, how it could affect others' lives, if they were exposed. And so it's for me, it's nothing I didn't expect. Like, I had no expectations from others going into it. I think that it is so important for all of us to share our journey because we are all here on this earth to learn from each other and really honestly to help one another. And I'm always looking for ways to grow. And I thought I tried to do it with as much care, love, and thoughtfulness as I could. And more importantly, I'm coming from a very healed place and a very forgiving place. So I felt really great about it, which I think for me, like I didn't I didn't leave the experience feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. And, it's so important that we are able to get our own stories out. It's our journey, it's our experience. And that does happen. I see that on a personal level. I see that with clients where someone's experience isn't allowed, or
Yep.
permitted. Because of how it might impact or how someone else's image management or how they want people to view them gets impacted. But it's so important that we get our stories out, and it sounds like you have handled it really well with grace
Thank
and
you.
with self-respect, and continuing to go on our mission of taking care of our mind, body, and soul, and living your authenticity and living your truth. And that will only contribute to your healing. And it'll be such an example for so many other people who feel like they are silenced, or feel like their story doesn't matter, or because of how someone else might feel that they're wrong, or that it didn't happen the way they thought it happened.
Yeah.
So I give you so much credit for
Thank you.
sharing your story, sharing your truth. And I know it's going to help so many other people.
Yeah, and like I said, on the flip side, I've received a lot of positive feedback. And here's the thing, there's so much more I could have said, but
Really?
did not say. I mean, like
Okay.
a lot more, but at the end of the day, the details of things aren't important.
Yeah.
And I think the place that I'm in now, it's really about living my life in as much purpose as I can,
Yeah.
and making sure that I'm, my higher power is proud of me, because that's all that matters to me. So, but
Absolutely.
today's topic, I just want to dive into that. And thank you so much for asking, because
Yeah.
like I said, I, received the mixed reviews. So really appreciate you asking me that. Um, but I would love to talk about a topic today that I see all over the internet, and also just use really almost too casually, this narcissistic term.
Oh, okay.
Whether
Yeah.
people say, oh, I come from a narcissistic family, or my boyfriend is narcissistic, or oh, my ex is crazy, is a narcissist. Like, this term has been used way too loosely. And I think it's really dangerous when people are labeling people and they're actually not equipped to label them. Of course, there are people with narcissistic tendencies, or may have certain traits that, view that, but to label them, I think, is just really dangerous. And I've seen it way too much. Like, a lot of podcasts are talking about it. I see it over, social media. So would love for us to dive into it a little bit today, especially with your background being a licensed therapist. I know that you have clients that deal with this abuse. You and I have had, experiences with people that we felt definitely lean towards had narcissistic tendencies. And so we have our own personal experiences as well. But I would love to just get your perspective today and just kind of talk about this. And then, more importantly, if people find themselves in some of these situations, how can they take care of themselves?
Yeah, no, this is such a great topic. And you're right. Like, I see it on social media. I have clients that will talk about it from what they learned on TikTok. Um, and I think one of the things you and I've talked about before is that not only is it someone diagnosing without the experience, training, and education to do so, I think it also can take away from that the individual who feels like they were a target of someone with narcissism. It takes away from their own healing process. It puts the focus on the person they're labeling as a narc, rather than on themselves and what they can do to set and maintain boundaries, what they can do to gain their own self-esteem, who they can choose to surround themselves with, how they can heal from their own traumas. And when we put someone as the target or the bad guy or the boogeyman, then we're looking outward rather than inward. So I'm glad we're talking about this topic today. Um, and then we can go into other words later, like gaslighting and what that kind of means.
Yeah, another term that I hear
Yeah,
a lot
all
of.
the time.
Yeah. So,
And
yeah, that's great. Like, what are some examples of narcissistic abuse?
okay, so like I said, gaslighting can be one, and we'll go into that more. So it's basically telling someone that their reality or the way they feel isn't true, or the way they saw things happening, or the way the person who is gaslighting, what they had originally said. It's almost like they're changing the story so that the other person gets the impression that they're wrong, or they destabilize them or their truth, which causes them to be more dependent on the person who has the narcissistic tendencies. Emotional and verbal abuse, projection, so putting your own stuff onto another person. There can be attempts to isolate the individual from their loved ones. There's can be threats of physical violence. There can be like constant criticism or insults, instilling fear about kind of the reactions that the narcissist might have, because there is such a thing as the narcissistic rage, or and it can kind of be unpredictable. So those who are in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic or has those tendencies talks about how they tend to walk on eggshells because they're afraid that at any moment this sort of eruption can happen. Oftentimes there's what we call a covert narcissist, so it's more subtle. There's more kind of subtle put down, subtle you need me, subtle a person who could be really involved in the community. They could be really involved in like a school board or just something of where they have status or control. And so they present themselves to the world as if they're very helpful and altruistic. And then behind closed doors, there's the rigidity, the control, the put downs. And so it can be very, very subtle at times. It's not always overt, where it's loud and patronizing and physical. And it can get bigger over time. So the person who's in that relationship might not see it. Also, someone with narcissism or narcissistic tendencies can be really charming. They can be really fun. They can be really easy to be around. They might not take up they're so much, they're in such control most of the time. They're not showing that they're in this problematic place. So it's kind of like they present as high self-esteem, so they can be really easy, charismatic, and fun to be around. And so oftentimes I'll have clients who will report to me, man, when I discontinued a relationship with someone who's a narcissist, I missed out on the fun, the excitement, the having someone who always knew where they wanted to eat or where they wanted to go or knew the latest thing. And so they're sort of torn with, like, it feels like almost a loss or a death that happens when they are no longer in relation with someone who has those tendencies. I know I went on and on. I could go on.
No. And also too, another one, and maybe you're familiar with this term, is a malignant narcissist. Mm-hmm. And this is something I learned from one of the she was actually on the Red Table with Jada Pinkett, and it's the first time I'd actually heard this term, because I never knew about it before. I'd heard of covert and just regular narcissism, and didn't really know about the malignant narcissist, which is a form of narcissistic personality disorder that's highly abusive. It's like people actually get a sense of satisfaction from hurting others, and really manipulating them to lie, gain control, money, whatever it may be that they desire. But you see a lot of that with people who like to hurt people.
So it's interesting that we're talking about this right now, when just the other day I was talking to a friend who had been in a relationship with a person that fits the description of a malignant narcissist. I can't diagnose them. I'm not treating this individual, but they had shared an interaction where the person had said, that my friend had said, why do you do this to me? Why do you treat me this way? And they said, because I can, because it gives me power. You allow me to do this, and I know it hurts you, and I feel like I need it. It's almost, they were able to explain almost in a moment of clarity the monster that they feel comes out in them, and this need to dominate, this need to make someone smaller or less than, because they feel so small on the inside that they have to almost make the individual a platform for them to stand on, so they can have this stage, so that they can feel better, so that they can distract themselves from their own traumas and pains and struggles and child abuse and whatever it is they went through that led them to be where they're at today.
Exactly. And it's so great that you said that. And thank you so much for sharing. And, I will definitely be keeping your friend in prayer. But one of the things that I think people don't understand is narcissism is, you're not born a narcissist, it's developed from a place of trauma. So, a lot of times I say, like, when a trauma happens in your life, if it's unhealed, like, that's the place that you are, within. So you're developing this almost character, if you will. Talk about that a little bit more, because I know you and I have talked about that.
Right. And textbooks will say that, the wound happens around age 2. And so that's where kind of age 2 is where we are very selfish and it's all about me. It's all about getting my needs met. And then so when you um kind of have the trauma in that age range, it sort of develops over time, and then somewhere between 18 and your 40s is kind of the time where the narcissism will really show up.
Mhm.
So, as I said, textbooks will say that. I kind of see it more as, like you were saying, when the
Yeah.
trauma happens, or the rejection, or the neglect,
Mhm.
or abuse happens, is sort of when it starts to develop. Recently, I read something that made so much sense, and it was talking about narcissism really develops when there is a parent who underindulges in emotional needs and overindulges in superficial attributes. So that is more getting praise for what the child does, or
Mhm.
how they look or appear physically, or appear to the world, and
Mhm.
get less attention or support for the who they are. So
Their
for the
emotional
child's
needs.
emotional
Yeah.
needs.
Yep.
And gosh, when I read that, it made so much sense.
Yeah.
And so many parents, myself included, have been in that place at certain times, wanting our kid to win a swim race, or wanting our child to do well in school, or wanting our child, like, wow, look at my child. And then for me, it made me take a step back and go, oh, what's most important?
Yep.
Not how I appear to the world because of how my child is, but looking at their needs, their strengths, what's going to be safe for them, what's going to be healthy for them, what's going to be contributing to who they are from the day they were born, and what their skill set is. And it was just so, even though I knew some of this stuff, it was
Yeah.
such a helpful reminder for me as a parent, and I'm sure for so many other parents,
Oh,
that
yeah.
they're
I
not an
mean,
extension of us.
no, absolutely. And that's the I'm telling you, I love this that we're diving into this, because I think a lot of parents see their children as extensions of themselves, and they are whole humans with their own set of emotions and needs and everything. They're completely different than us. Their love languages are different, everything. Their apology languages are different. And I really love that you mentioned that, because when I was watching a movie with Will Smith, who played Venus and Serena's father,
Oh yeah.
it was such a great reminder for me. My kids are not in organized sports yet, because I'm a parent that thinks that they should, wait for all of that. I just want my kids to have fun and to enjoy their childhood. But one of the things that he said, a big takeaway for me, was that you should just have fun. He literally has some of the best, I mean, his daughter is the best tennis player in the world for many, many years, both of his daughters. And, the fact that he stressed to them, just
Yeah.
have fun,
Yeah.
was such a huge takeaway for me, because I think even when I played sports, that was not the messaging that I got. The messaging was, win, and when I didn't win, or if there was, if I maybe placed second or third, I was definitely picked apart. My races were picked apart. And, I wasn't able to just enjoy the process, because we're all learning, whether we're on the court, whether we're in the workplace, whether we're a parent. Like, we're all learning daily, and some days are going to be wonderful, and then some days you're going to just have fucking off days, excuse my language, but it's the truth. You're
Yeah.
just going to have an off day, and so you're not going to be able to win every single time. Like, we look at some of the greatest athletes in the world, from Kobe Bryant to LeBron James to, so many of them,
Yeah.
they also have bad days, so
Yeah.
so I love that you mentioned that. I would love to dive into the kind of family narcissistic system, because I know you and I have talked in the past about just how that dynamic is very similar to like an alcoholic family system. So I'd love for you to share that with the viewers, because it's the first time I had heard you, the way that you described it. I'd never learned that before.
Yeah.
So
So I'll start with the alcoholic family system,
yeah,
just because,
please.
some of our viewers might not be familiar. I wasn't at certain points. So with the alcoholic, there's, often a family member, typically the mom or the dad, right, within the household. It could be a sibling sometimes, right? And the other people within the family are all kind of subconsciously placed into roles to balance out the system. And to kind of avoid the eruption of the family member, and in this case, the alcoholic, having one of their inconsistent behaviors based on that substance. So replacing the alcoholic with someone with a mental illness, and in that a personality disorder. Narcissism is a personality disorder, which I can go into the difference between personality disorders in just a minute. And so there's someone who kind of enables it, right? So they kind of would be more like a codependent. So someone that does what they can to kind of sweep things under the rug, or to stabilize, or maybe goes along with it, doesn't argue, it makes excuses for that member's behavior. Then there's a family member who's kind of the scapegoat, so all eyes can be pointed on that member rather than the person with either the mental illness or the substance abuse. And then there's kind of the lost child, someone who is forgotten about, and they're the easy kid, we don't have to put much attention into them. And then there can be the mascot, so someone that distracts and is cute and entertaining and funny, kind of like a court gesture. And then there's the family hero, so someone everyone can be kind of proud of. And within the family, it's not always the case that each person takes on a role. Someone could take on both. You and I've talked about how I've been the hero in my family and the scapegoat. And you've
I've been the scapegoat in my family. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Right. And all of that is to kind of help stabilize. The system wants to maintain homeostasis. And when there's dysfunction, it'll do whatever it can to create and maintain that homeostasis.
That is so good. I mean, and I think, it's almost like in every family, this is where I say, it's similar to grief. It's like these systems live in so many families, and it doesn't have to be alcohol, it can be narcissism, it can be any form of personality, or some type of disorder or disease. And so I love that you kind of walked us through that, and I'm sure that people will resonate with that.
And then real briefly, I want to go, because this will give, I think, viewers some insight around where a person with a personality disorder may be coming from. Yeah. So what we call, I'm going to try to do this in simple terms. So what if you have an issue, like an issue, take that out real quick. So if you are have symptoms like anxiety or depression or bipolar, something's not right inside of you. And so that would be what we call an axis 1, or ego dystonic. You want to distance yourself from the symptoms, so they're more likely to go get help, see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist. There is something wrong with me, I need help, and they'll work to try to distance themselves from those symptoms or the diagnosis. Now, with a personality disorder, so that would be something like narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, or what people commonly refer to as a sociopath, borderline personality disorder, histrionic, schizotypical. Those are what we would call ego syntonic, or axis 2. It's I'm fine, I'm normal, and if everyone else would change, or if this person or that person would change, then I would be okay. And so they truly have reached a space in their mind where they believe that they're fine, that the way they operate is common or normal, and that the other people have the problem. And so I see those who are in relationships with someone with a personality disorder, and they're so incredibly frustrated, and but just to take a second to understand that the person with the personality disorder truly believes that the way they view the world is perfectly fine. So
Exactly.
it's
And this
not
is
like,
where the
yeah,
no shame, no blame really
exactly.
comes into play. Like I have an incredible amount of empathy.
Yeah.
And I've been in relationships with people with personality disorders and have seen it through friends and even, talking with clients now that I'm a certified coach. Like these are things that they deal with, and it affects,
Yeah.
them. So I'm really grateful that you're talking about that, but it really, I want to stress, like, this is not an opportunity for us to shame anyone or
Yeah.
to, even blame, but we're just, letting you know that it does come from a place.
Yeah. And I had a professor in grad school say to me that what happens is that with a person with a personality disorder is it's their system's way of learning how to cope. They
Yep.
may have started with the anxiety and the depression from the trauma, and needs weren't met, help wasn't out there for them. And so the system, our brain is so amazing in taking care of
Mm.
us, because if their minds, this is what the professor had said, if their minds hadn't shifted their world view to thinking they're fine and everyone else is not,
Mhm.
what would have happened? They could have gone in such a dark depression, or they could have become so incredibly anxious, that other things could have happened. It's like, if they knew what was going on in their world, would they be here? So it's almost like um, this false sense of reality is helping keep them alive and continuing on. And that's why things like with narcissism, things like grandiosity and this false
Yep.
sense of self, it's almost helping one to continue on rather than to be stuck inside with
Well, and
the
also to feel safe. Like
exact.
it's a safety mechanism. And that's where I say the empathy comes in, because I know that this is how they feel safe.
Yes.
And so for me, I've seen it, dealt with it, and I can imagine that, so many viewers have too. But I want to ask you a question about, like, because I know that you have clients that also, kind of deal with this, and you mentioned your friend. And I know just from talking with you, we have both had it in our personal lives. Like, how does one, I guess, take care of themselves in that situation? Like, what do you advise your clients to do?
Mhm.
Like, if they find themselves in a narcissistic situation, where there's abuse, where they now feel like, they're the problem. Um, how do you advise them?
Yeah. So while they're in the relationship, it's almost what's reported to me and what I experienced myself is you're so in the eye of the storm that all you
Mm.
can do is survive. Like you're not thriving at all. And so um, if the person with those narcissistic tendencies is unwilling to get help, you have to, well, even when you're in the relationship, you have to get help yourself. There is often dynamics like a narcissist with a codependent. So you can seek help, like something along the lines of CODA, which is like a codependency recovery, where you learn to love the self and stop putting all your self-esteem or your identity into helping or saving somebody else. There's this kind of joke among codependents, and I can say it because I am one. I'm a recovering codependent. That when a codependent dies, everyone else's life flashes before their eyes. Like they really lose that sense of self. And so getting into something like CODA or therapy to receive the support that you are worth it, you are worthy. And then when engaging, so once you've distanced yourself from the person with those narcissistic tendencies, they books there are books on it, or there are educators who will say that one of the best ways to interact with a narcissist is to not is to make yourself as uninteresting and boring, and you don't, in the same way you wouldn't argue with a drunk person, you wouldn't argue with a narcissist. They're going to find a way to win the argument. They tend to have this grandiose sense of self. So no matter what you say, they're going to be right. They'd rather be right than happy. And I always tell a person who's been in a position with someone who has narcissistic tendencies, you can be right or happy. Why don't you choose happy? Let them choose right. And so, yeah, not engaging in self-care, focusing on you and what. And I remember another professor saying to me, what was it in you that led you to be in a relationship with someone like this? Why did you not have self-trust? Why did you lack self-respect? Now, that's not going to be the case for everyone, but that was the case for me. And I took a hard look at myself once I had that distance. I didn't know myself. I really went along with someone else's journey and did not have a lot of esteem. I was, this athlete who was good at things, but hadn't worked on who I am. And so I was able to build esteem. I was able to build more character, and recognize that just because someone told me certain things did not mean it was true. I had to believe me over the opinion of someone who was louder and believed they were right. Because there are people who will talk to us as if they know what they're talking about because they're so strong in their speech and articulate. And so you're going, oh, maybe they're right, but really listening inward to yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
On the flip side, no, I love that you said that. And thank you so much for sharing that. On the flip side, like there's also like people who grew up in a narcissistic home. So they tend to attract, narcissists because it feels like home. It feels safe. It feels familiar, and so, and I've seen that a lot, where it just, this is home to me. Like this makes sense to me. And you don't even realize you're in it until you're all the way in it. And so I've seen that end of it as well.
And that goes for a lot of different dysfunction, that it was familiar. So therefore it feels like it's right. And so with my clients, we'll have to dissect and look at the difference between familiar and safe.
I love that.
Because familiar isn't always safe.
No, that is very true. And it's something that I had to learn, over the years. And so I think too, like when you're, like as TD Jakes, I'm going to use his line again, but a 10-gallon full person full of love, and you have a lot of light in you. I think that is also attractive to people with less light. And so they tend to gravitate towards you. And they come in, my experience with people with narcissistic tendencies is they come in really hot, they come in strong, they come in like, I know you, like you're, this wonderful person. And then before you know it, they flip a switch, and so the flipping of the switch, I think, is what just catches people off guard, and they don't know. They're like, what happened? And then they're constantly chasing what felt good, like in the earlier stages of the relationship, hoping that, they will find that again. And then they a lot of times don't.
And I'm glad you brought up that the attraction, because in my case, like I recognized I had esteem to work on. I also recognized that there were strengths within me. It wasn't that I was just this low self-esteem. Narcissists tend to be drawn to someone who has something that they can kind of take as their own or take credit for. And so, there's this misconception that a narcissist will only go to someone with low self-esteem. Well, no, narcissists like to associate with right? People who they feel like they can get something out of.
Yeah.
And so jokingly, there's like a compliment in a way if a narcissist is drawn to you because they want something in you, right? And like I'd said before, studies and books will show making yourself uninteresting and boring is one of the best ways to distance yourself from a narcissist.
Yeah.
They'll move on to something that's more interesting or that serves a need within them.
Yeah, and I think if
That
it's within your family, right?
Yeah.
It's like a family system. Having really strong boundaries
Yeah.
is another way that, I've coached people that have
Yeah.
dealt with this, is making sure that you are rooted in who you are, the self-care, the self-love, like really doing the work on yourself, but then making sure that your boundaries are very strong and you hold firm on those boundaries. And you then get to choose how you want to deal with that particular person or not at all, as you said, to distance yourself, because we all have choice in all of this, right? And so I think like that's something too that I've kind of coached people, and also have done for myself, in certain situations where I have just very, very firm boundaries and won't cross them for, or break them for anyone.
I have a lot of respect and empathy for people who grow up in a home where there's narcissism or narcissistic tendencies. In my case, it was a former partner and an extended family member, so not even in my family, but an extended family member, that I was able to make choice to disengage a lot easier than what I would perceive it would be like when it is a parent or a sibling or a child, because there's that battle within that, like, this is someone I'm supposed to have in my life forever.
Yeah.
And so to have to do something that's counterintuitive to what we believe should happen in family, I give a lot of credit to people who have to navigate through that situation.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. And it really does take immense bravery to leave really even a narcissistic relationship, like let's just start there, but more importantly, a family system, because it's definitely not for the faint of hearts. You have to be ready to almost lose everything, that was familiar, and really be prepared to be talked about, lied on, made fun of, made to look crazy or gaslit on the way out, for months, in some cases, years. Like people will go at great lengths, like I said, I've dated people with these sort of tendencies. And when I broke things off, there was the narcissistic rage, that I experienced. And, I am not a person who is going to clear my name, clear things up. Like I, let people believe whatever they choose to believe, because I'm not here to change anyone's opinions. And quite honestly, I do believe that, when people have opinions or, what have you, and it's only coming from one end, and they're not getting the full picture, that says a whole lot more about them than it does me. So I have witnessed this where, it's you're talked about, you're lied on, that person's crazy, I've heard it all, so but at the end of the day, it's really rage because you have disrupted their program. You disrupted, what they, were coming in to do and to take and to have that control. And so the minute that you do that, then you're now, on the outside. But the family system, as you said, it is really not easy. And so just commend anyone who is out there and doing that.
The fact that you're able to see that's their stuff, not mine, is amazing. And I would like to hear a little bit more about what you do or have done to be able to have perspective, because so many people will second guess, will allow the gaslighting, will say, oh wait, maybe I did this, or maybe it was my fault. But for you to be able to distance yourself from it and say that's their journey, that's their stuff, the no shame, no blame, they're on their path, I'm on mine, but you're able to keep on your side of the street. What do you do, and what have you done to be able to help?
And thanks for asking that. It's not one thing. I'll just start by saying that it is a multitude of things, and really years of self-caring, and really like doing work within myself and understanding who I am, not in the eyes of any human on this earth, but in the eyes of God. And
Yeah.
so my relationship with God has really helped me tremendously, because I don't see my eyes through anyone else on this earth. I see my eyes through my own eyes and also his, And so I am not a perfect human. I don't claim to be. I don't even want to be. And I make mistakes just like everyone, and feel, doubt in certain things, and feel like I need to work harder at certain things. And so, but I think it comes from a few things. Really, like I said, my relationship with my higher power, who I call God, but then also doing. I do believe that when we set, destinations, or some people like to call them goals, or, I'm always working towards something in addition to working on myself. And so in that, like, I get a sense of feeling accomplished, and feeling like, okay, I'm making a difference. And then also being of service. I think this is a really big one. A lot of times we get so caught up in our own worlds that we forget that, being of service makes you also feel good, And so I have always lived my life in service of others, while also making sure that I take care of myself. And
Yeah.
so there's a ton of things that I do, but those are kind of the themes, that they kind of, or the buckets that they fall under. And then I would say the last one is really having a sense of myself, and understanding that, no one has the power to change how I see myself. No one. And many have tried. Many. And but no one has the power to change that in me.
Yeah.
I am my biggest cheerleader. Okay. And I have also been my biggest critic. And so when I think about that, I think about like all of the things that I've done, like, and I think when you're in those situations, it's so easy to get caught up in the narrow, right? And you're just in that moment, but you have to think of yourself the total,
Yeah.
version of yourself, and all the things that you've overcome, all the things that you've, healed from, dealt with, any generational curses you've broken, like all the things that make you up into the person that you are today. That is how I've been able to
Wow.
really overcome things.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I couldn't agree more. For me, it was doing initial life-changing actions like therapy and joining a group. But then, kind of like we went over with a recent guest on our show, it's about those daily practices and consistency in doing what we need to do to fuel our soul. And like I've said, I do this thing called a 10th step daily inventory, and it's all these different things to fuel my mind, body, and soul. And I get to,
Yes.
I get to do it daily.
Yeah.
That helps me maintain my esteem, my sense of self, my wholeness. I anchor in my home that God gave to me. And then
Exactly.
I'm not off in self-doubt, trusting and believing those who aren't living their life in a way I would want or respect anyways.
Yeah,
So,
and I also think too, like, the other component is just having empathy for others, like, and that has also helped me, because I know that people deal with things, and we all are dealing with multiple things, but a lot of times people don't have the tools on their tool belt to address the trauma, the pain,
yeah,
that they're kind of suffering with. And a lot of times they suffer in silence. And
yeah,
so they have to create these characters externally and in person, where they might be very jovial, and they, are always laughing, and you see all their pictures and they're always perfect, like they're creating these characters. And so a part of me just has a lot of empathy for them, because I'm like, wow, like, the amount of pain that you must feel,
yeah,
like, to have to create a whole fake
yeah,
character.
yeah,
It always, makes me sad for them. Like, I remember I was even working with a woman that I felt had,
yeah,
narcissistic tendencies, and she, went to great lengths to tell lies, and to try and, when her lie didn't work, recruit others,
Yeah.
and I've lived it, whether it's in my personal life and in the workplace, and
Yeah.
seeing it, it's just,
Yeah.
it's sad to me, because I'm like, I don't think she even realizes how amazing she is, or how amazing I thought she was,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
And I'm glad you touched on empathy. That's kind of the last thing I
yeah,
want to bring up today is that empathy. And I would encourage viewers, if you have a narcissist or a person with narcissistic tendencies, or someone you perceive is a narcissist in your life, the best gift you can give yourself is forgiveness.
yes,
Have empathy for what they may have gone through, get curious about it. It doesn't make it an excuse, but at least you have some perspective on what could have led to where they are today. I was taught by a therapist of mine to give them to God and focus back on myself, because the time and energy I was spending on them was robbing me of that time and love for myself, so I could fuel up and be the best version of me for those around me who did treat me with love and respect, and weren't boundary violators. And so for viewers, I encourage you to find a way to forgive those who have violated your boundaries and do it for yourself, because that's the greatest gift that we can give ourselves. And I'm not saying do it today, but get curious about it. We need to forgive on our own timeline.
yeah,
Get maybe curious about the idea of first self-forgiveness, because for me, I had to forgive for being in a relationship with someone who could harm me. Like, look what I put myself, that's how I viewed it. Look what I put myself in. And then I forgave myself, gave myself grace around it. And then I was able to give that person grace and forgiveness. And what that did, like a boomerang, it came right back to me, and I felt whole again. And they didn't live rent free in my head anymore.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because my forgiveness patterns tend to be the opposite. Like, I can forgive others a lot easier, than I could forgive myself in the past. Now I have a lot better tools to be able to work towards forgiveness a lot faster. But I am a firm believer in forgiving others quickly, and then also allowing yourself to kind of go through those grief stages, because anytime you're forgiving someone, there is a sense of grief that you're grieving, that you're grieving just the relationship. You're grieving, like, how the hell did I get here? Like,
Wow.
you're like so many things, or maybe the loss of a job because you're in that kind of toxic work environment, and so like, really taking the time to do that has always helped me as well. But I love the, reminder to everyone about forgiving others, but also, more importantly, yourself, because that's really what forgiveness is for. It's not for the other person. It's that you can release them in love. Like, God has helped me tremendously, is releasing things with love, and to know that I did not cause their pain, so I'm not responsible to do any work towards them, like getting better. That is the biggest thing. Like, the biggest takeaway for me is, like, I used to be almost like a, hate to use the term fixer, but like a, just wanting to heal people, help people, when I was younger. And it's not our responsibility. You have to give them to themselves or to a higher power, like, that's who's responsible to.
We have to give others the gift of pain, just like we were given the gift of pain, because pain is the motivator of change. And so if we're in there fixing and doing and taking care of, we're not allowing them on their own journey that God has given them to find what they need to find when they need to. And maybe it won't happen in this lifetime, but it's for them.
Definitely robbing them of their learnings. And that was a big takeaway for me from my earlier relationship. So thank you so much for sharing that. This has been such, like, just a great topic for us to talk about. And, I know that you have clients dealing with it. I have clients dealing with it. We've dealt with it personally throughout our journey. And may even encounter it in the future, but I think, just talking about it more, and coming from a place of empathy, and really focusing back on yourself, because I think when you're in any sort of, abusive situation, whether it be physical, mental, any of the emotional, abuse that you're dealing with, it really robs you of your joy. And so leaning back into yourself, getting back into yourself, focusing on fueling yourself is the most important thing that we all can do. And it's a large reason why, I wanted to start this podcast and, kind of begged Alli to join me on this journey. So grateful that she is. And just your knowledge today has been wonderful. You taught me so much just in talking to you, before we even started this. So thank you guys so much.